Is the US government running out of gold? Have they depleted their gold stockpiles? What if I told you there's a possibility that the United States of America might be completely out of gold? Yes, you heard that right. Fort Knox could be nearly empty for all we know. If this is true, it could spell big trouble for the economy and your investments. Gold prices are rocking, hitting all-time highs, but no one's talking about it. Did you know a gold bar is now worth $1 million? Wow. In this video, I'll break down the facts, the rumors, and the reasons why you should be paying close attention to what's happening right now with the price of gold. Hi, I'm Noel Lorenzana. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. So am I just rehashing a conspiracy theory about the US running out of gold? Not necessarily. Reason number one, the lack of financial audits. One of the most glaring red flags surrounding the US gold reserves is that they haven't undergone a full comprehensive audit since the 1950s. The last thorough audit conducted between 1953 and 1954 involved a complete physical examination of the gold held in Fort Knox and other vaults. This audit included counting, weighing, and assaying the gold to ensure its authenticity and quantity. Back then, the Eisenhower administration wanted to assure the public that America's wealth was secure. But here's the interesting part. Since that time, there has not been another audit of this scale. Just to be clear, the US gold reserves are primarily managed by the US Department of Treasury, specifically through the US Mint. Even though the US Mint conducts annual financial audits that supposedly verify the gold reserves, they're not as thorough or transparent as one might think. A lot of people criticize these audits because of their lack of thoroughness. They usually just involve partial checks or a quick look at the records instead of a full hands-on examination of the gold. Back in 1974, with growing public concern and conspiracy theories, Treasury Secretary William Simon set up a high-profile visit to Fort Knox. They brought along some congressmen to show off the gold and calm everyone down. But if we're being honest, it was more of a media stunt than a real audit. They only looked at a small amount of the gold, and instead of clearing things up, it left people with even more questions. Since then, the government has been very quiet about the state of its gold reserves, despite repeated calls from politicians, economists, and activists for a full independent audit. No such effort has been made. This silence has only fueled speculation and suspicion. Now, if the gold is really there, wouldn't it make sense to reassure the public with a full-scale transparent audit? The fact that the US government hasn't conducted a comprehensive audit in over 70 years raises serious questions, at least for me. I mean, what do you think? Has the US gold reserves quietly dwindled over the years? Or worse, could it be that the gold reserves are no longer intact? Let me know in the comments. The lack of transparency here is pretty concerning, especially since gold is such a key piece of our government's and economy's stability. These days, trust in government institutions is already on shaky ground, so when there's no clear and thorough audit, it's natural to start doubting. Are they hiding something? And if the gold isn't really there, what does this mean for the future of the US economy? These questions aren't just theoretical, they have real-world implications for the security of our nation's wealth and stability of our economy. The longer we go without a full audit, the more people start to speculate, and in the world of finance, speculation can be just as destabilizing as any cold hard truth. Just so you know, in accounting, a financial audit is basically a third-party independent verification of what's stated is actually there. Did you know that according to Kitco, a recent audit by the US Treasury's Inspector General found that for decades, the US Mint didn't verify where the gold they used for minting coins actually came from. This is even though the US Mint has been promoting its coins as being made from 100% newly mined American gold. The report uncovered serious issues with how the Mint buys gold, showing that they haven't been meeting their legal obligation of only purchasing US mined gold, despite claiming they had been buying US mined gold. It's really interesting. I'll link the article in the comments. Read it if you want to know where they've been buying the gold from. Kind of makes you wonder what else we could be misled about. Reason number 2, the Federal Reserve's shadowy role as the U.S. central bank. Many years ago, I read Edward Griffin's book, The Creature from Jekyll Island. It offers a deep dive into the creation of the Federal Reserve, exploring how a secretive meeting on Jekyll Island off the coast of Georgia in 1910 among powerful bankers and government officials laid the groundwork for what would become the U.S. central bank. Griffin's book presents a critical view of the Federal Reserve, suggesting that it was designed to benefit a select few at the expense of the many, raising concerns about its true role and influence. It's important to mention that some of Griffin's claims are considered controversial and aren't universally accepted by historians or economists. That said, it's still very interesting nonetheless. This raises an important question though. If the Federal Reserve is steering our economic system, what role does it have when it comes to our gold reserves? The Fed's impact on the US economy is undeniable, especially with its control over monetary policy, interest rates, and the money supply. It's important to point out, though, that the Federal Reserve isn't a typical private entity or a purely government-run institution. It was created by an act of Congress back in 1913 and operates independently within the government with a mix of public and private elements. The Federal Reserve Board of Governors is a federal agency, but the 12 regional Federal Reserve banks function more like private corporations. Historically, the Federal Reserve played a significant role during the period when the US dollar was backed by gold, but it's actually the US Treasury, not the Federal Reserve, that owns and manages the nation's physical gold reserves. The US Mint, which is part of the US Treasury, is in charge of storing and securing this gold at places like Fort Knox, the Denver Mint, and West Point. That being said, the Fed's decisions have had a huge impact on gold's role in our economy. The biggest example is when President Nixon in 1971, influenced by economic conditions and advice from the Fed, decided to end the direct convertibility of the dollar to gold. This move completely changed the US economy and kicked off the era of fiat currency. That's where our money is no longer backed by physical assets like gold. Considering the Fed's substantial influence over the economy, it makes you wonder, how does its role connect with the management and importance of gold reserves today? While the Fed might not directly control the gold, its broader control over monetary policy definitely raises questions about the stability of the financial system that gold is supposed to support. The way that the Federal Reserve operates is with a lot of independence, which can sometimes make it seem pretty non-transparent. Even though the Fed's meetings and decisions are overseen and their minutes are made public, the complexity and technical nature of what they really do creates a sense of secrecy. This has led to various conspiracy theories and concerns about whether the Fed's actions really align with the public's best interests. If the Federal Reserve, with its considerable influence, has any indirect impact on the status or perception of our gold reserves, it's worth asking, can we fully trust that our nation's gold is secure? The lack of direct transparency in the Fed's operations, along with its history with gold, definitely leaves room for doubt and speculation. At a time when trust in institutions is already quite fragile, these questions become even more important. Gold reserves are supposed to be the foundation of our financial security. If they've been compromised, or if their role has been reduced in ways we don't fully understand, the consequences could be serious. Reason number 3, the abandonment of the gold standard. One of the most significant red flags concerning the US gold reserves is the government's decision to abandon the gold standard and remove gold and silver from our nation's currency. The shift wasn't just a financial decision, it was a dramatic departure from the principles laid out by our founding fathers. The US Constitution explicitly grants Congress the power to coin money and regulate the value thereof. It also states that no state shall make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts. The intention was clear. Money should be backed by something of real value, gold and silver. But like I mentioned earlier, in 1971, President Nixon officially ended the direct convertibility of the US dollar to gold, effectively abandoning the gold standard. This decision marked the beginning of the fiat currency era, where the dollar's value is backed by nothing more than the government's promise to pay. This was a monumental shift in US economic policy, moving us away from honest money, a term often used to describe currency backed by tangible assets like gold and silver. But it didn't stop there. Gold and silver were previously removed from US coins as well. Before 1965, US dimes, quarters, half dollars, and dollar coins were made from 90% silver. But that year, the Coinage Act of 1965 was passed, removing silver from these coins, replacing it with less valuable metals like copper and nickel. This not only diluted the intrinsic value of our money, but also symbolized a broader move away from the monetary principles outlined in our Constitution. Why does this even matter? Because by removing gold and silver from our money, the US government effectively severed the currency's connection to something of real and tangible value. This shift opened the door to unchecked money printing and massive debt, which has brought us to the uncertain economic situation we're in today. Abandoning the gold standard and removing gold and silver from our currency wasn't just going against constitutional principles, it was a move that might have undermined the very foundation of our economic stability. The fact that gold and silver are no longer part of our money raises some serious questions about what's really going on with the US gold reserves. If the government doesn't see the need to back the dollar with gold anymore, then what's happened to the reserves that once supported our currency? Have they been depleted, sold off, or just made irrelevant by modern economic policies? This move away from the Constitution and the decision to abandon gold and silver as the backbone of our currency should be a wake-up call. Our founding fathers knew the importance of basing money on something real, something that couldn't be easily manipulated or inflated away. The US government's decision to forsake gold and silver for fiat currency isn't just a historical footnote, it's a warning sign of a harbinger of the vulnerabilities we're facing today. What does this mean for our future? As we've explored, there are some serious reasons to question the current state of the US gold reserves, from disappearing audits to the shadowy role of the Federal Reserve and the abandonment of the gold standard, which went against what our founding fathers intended. These issues paint a troubling picture of where we are now. If our gold reserves have been deemed irrelevant or pushed aside in favor of modern monetary theory, we could be standing on a house of cards. Gold has been the bedrock of economic stability for thousands of years. It's a tangible asset that provides security in uncertain times. Without it, we're left relying on the full faith and credit of a government that's racked up unprecedented levels of debt and has shown a tendency to drift away from the principles that once made our economy strong. As we move forward in these uncertain times, it's important to remember the lessons of the past. Our founding fathers knew the importance of basing our money on something real, something that couldn't be manipulated or inflated away. Today, those principles feel even more relevant than ever. If this video gave you something to think about, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the state of the US gold reserves and where you think we're headed. As always, thanks for watching, and see you in the next video up here, where I share the greatest investment opportunity of our time, in my humble opinion. Take care.